Good morning, YouTube. JT Serenity Farms prepping here. So, we have talked about for months what the agenda of the communist regime that is currently illegally in power and what was going to happen as a result of the pandemic. We specifically mentioned vaccinations, which I said would lead directly to checkpoints and all personal, health, financial, any information about you would be inside you. Of course, it's been bandied about as a immunization card. Well, Pedo Joe and his administration just 3 short days ago are now actively looking at expanding mandatory testing for travelers on U.S. domestic flights. That means if I want to fly out of -5 degrees below zero upstate New York today to Florida to work on my tan, I can't fly back. I can fly to another country like Mexico, and then I have to have a negative test to come back in. But I can go there no problem. Well, the regime, we can call him a dictator now because he made the statement himself that we're a democracy. Well, we're a constitutional republic, Joey. But he needed votes. And only dictators use executive orders, 32 in 5 days. If you're in complete control of all 3 branches of government, why the rush? You have 4 years to collapse America. Why do you want to do it in 4 weeks? Okay, back to the regime. So, I'd like to show you just what they're planning. When they say they're actively looking at it, they've already planned it. It's already being drawn up. They're just waiting to fearmonger some more numbers to implement it. Okay, so let's take a look.
Now. Marty Cetron, director of the Division of Global Migration and Quarantine at the CDC, who was asked about whether new domestic travel testing requirements might be employed, he replied, "Conversations that are ongoing and looking at what the types and locations of testing might be, we're actively looking at it." Okay, just so you know now he may cap that into domestic flights too, so be prepared. You may be stuck wherever you're heading, but if you think no big deal, I could always just drive back home. Oh, my friends, that's where you need to hold up because they're adding some really tricky wording in here. Last week, President Joe Biden directed U.S. agencies to make recommendations to impose additional public health measures for domestic travel and to consider new requirements for people crossing land borders. Oh, I know what you'll say. Land borders mean those borders like from Canada to the U.S. and Mexico to the U.S. I know you're going to say that. I know you are. But have we learned nothing about, well, according to his words again, Dictator Biden and his administration? And when do you think they're going to class a state-to-state border as a land border? You know they're concerned over COVID-19. You've seen the mass amount of changes he's done. He signed EOs quicker than any, and even in the bottom it says we realize there's been a dramatic evolution and increase in both testing platforms and testing capacity. I think this is a really important part of our toolkit to combat this pandemic. They continue to give you indicators of what's going on. In discussions with airline officials, the CDC has said it's considering requiring domestic testing too, because they're going to continue to expand this. Executive Order promoting COVID-19 safety in domestic and international travel, January 21st, 2021. Within this, it says, international certificates of vaccinations consistent with applicable law, the Secretary of State, the Secretary of HHS, and the Secretary of Homeland Security, in coordination with any relevant international organization, shall assess the feasibility of linking COVID-19 vaccination to international certificates of vaccination. What does that mean? That is called the testing pass. Papers, please.
All right, so you see what they slid in there in just A, B, C, D, E. International. So already they're establishing despotic, tyrannical rules that conform to the globalist outlook on this entire process. Okay, first it was going to be international flights when you want to come back to America. Now it's actively looking at domestic flights within the United States. Then it was land crossing, which, as Justice Knight, Restricted Republic, great channel, as he stated, you may think that only means if you drive across to Mexico or into Canada. No, that will be going anywhere. You want to drive from upstate New York, take the ferry across to communist Vermont, there's going to be a station on that border crossing or the bridge where someone's going to check to see if you have, as Justice says later, the job card. You see where this is all headed. It is all about control. This would fit right in with their climate change and their forthcoming gas tax, mileage tax. They will clock wherever you are going via all these different rules. You've got your card. I'm sure it'll be scanned so you can tell how many miles you drove. Then they can get you for their gas tax and their mileage tax. I'm sure there'll be something installed on everyone's car per edict if a actual mileage tax is implemented. And they will be documenting wherever you go. If you already have a smart vehicle, they're already doing that. And it's very simple. We knew that this was going to lead to not being able to buy, sell, trade, travel, work, anything if you don't have the information that the communists want. So let's check out a little bit more. Well, would you looky there? The priority of Biden's regime. Pentagon declares climate change national security issue moving forward.
Pentagon declares climate change a national security issue. What does that mean? If the Pentagon declares that the climate change is a national security issue, they can react to what they're doing procedurally to impact the environment. Joe Biden's already told you what he's going to do.
Okay, so if the regime bans new oil and gas leases on federal land after he's already shut down the Keystone Pipeline, all to combat climate change, then he's going to make us dependent on foreign countries who do not have any of the standards for producing their oil and gas that the United States does. So in essence, we'll be getting dirtier fuel if we get any at all. But that's not enough for Pedo Joe. Let me play you a little clip and see if you remember this campaign promise.
Our interdependence in gas needs to extend internationally, but we also don't need any fuel here. Well, he's already actually told us a step beyond that, too. Let's go back 1 year. Biden promises to outlaw gas-powered cars if elected president. Well, how are you going to outlaw cars? I mean, that doesn't make any sense. Well, the way you would outlaw gas cars is to be able to find those who are driving gas vehicles. And if you can't find them within the state, because states have rights, the only thing you could control technically is the federal government, although it should, and every governor should react. The only thing you really could control would be the passes between states.
Okay, so if the regime is going to outlaw gas-powered cars, trucks, planes, trains, automobiles, then how will they determine who has them and who doesn't? Because right now I'm saying I ain't giving up my gas-powered car or truck or tractor or snowmobile or four-wheeler. Well, that's where the immunization card and COVID checkpoints will come in handy dandy. And a lot of those will be AKA toll booths. That will determine as you pull up what kind of car you are driving. It will determine if you are allowed to go through that checkpoint wherever you are going. New York State, you can't drive 100 miles on the highway without coming to a checkpoint. That's just within the state, and the state is huge. Okay? So, who's going to have electric cars? The uber rich, the beautiful people, libtards will probably be given all sorts of grants, loans, funds, whatever. Rat cars, I'll call them. Rat out your neighbors and get a free electric car. It's coming. So, basically, they will be ensuring a way to keep everyone locked in their own homes, traveling nowhere. I'm not quite sure how the airlines are going to react to this. You know, the ones that we bail out with billions of dollars every year as they continue to raise prices and gouge us. Yeah, those. So, as you know, total executive orders in a first week by a president, duly elected presidents, where Trump was 4, Barry Soetoro was 5, W. Bush was 0, but then he made up for that with all sorts of stupid crap, didn't he? Slick Willie was 2, Bush Sr. was 1, Reagan was 0. The second or third worst president ever, Carter, was 1, and dictator Biden, 3 dozen. That's 36 to the tards. But this is the same guy who said, we're a democracy, and I'd have to be a dictator to do all those executive orders. And we have currently all 3 branches of government, so what's the rush, Joey? Okay, so where does all this ultimately lead if it's not stopped? All right, so they're already demonizing anyone without their socialist, communist ideology, labeling us domestic terrorists, white supremacists, you name it, we've been called it. Okay, that's dividing the libtards and everyone else even more, which they want, divide and conquer. So we go with the climate change emergency, the gas tax, the rising taxes, the mileage tax, the pandemic checkpoints, vaccination cards, social credit scores, no driving, no flying, no moving state to state, loss of jobs by the thousands and thousands. Then they bring in UBI. That's not a cheer, but the socialist libtards love it. They're going to promise everybody $2,000 a month. There'll be no incentive to go to work, to achieve anything, to do anything. They've determined what your income is so they can control you. If they pay you, you obey them. Then they institute how much you can eat, what kind of foods you can eat. One more step, then in comes housing. There'll be no rural, no country. Everyone should be in sustainable housing, which is being built in mega cities, captive audience, fences all around. You see where it's all headed. I made a video a few days ago about the Hunger Games and the 12 areas that each produced a little something and contributed to the greater good of the uber rich elites. Does this all sound like a fantasy? Because it's not. They're telling you they're going to do it. So once again, if there is that little plan out there, feel free to bring that mofo into action. Now. Woohoo! Alright. Like, share, subscribe, comment, notification bell. For now, JT signing off. I'm gonna go burn some wood in the stove, Joe.